The film follows Cynthia Winstone, a seemingly ordinary therapist with an extraordinary ability. She can enter people's minds and confront the psychological entities that torment them. Her gift is rare, one she shared with her late husband, and is now being studied by her daughter Jordan, who helps with patient screenings but hasn't developed the same power yet. Cynthia keeps a low profile, offering alternative therapy only to those whose minds are safe to explore. But the safe boundaries she's created begin to crumble when a desperate teenage girl named Riley Harris appears at her doorstep. Riley arrives in the rain alone and terrified, with self-inflicted wounds and a frantic urgency to speak to Cynthia. She claims to see a dark, predatory figure constantly watching her. Cynthia is cautious, but Jordan feels deeply drawn to the girl's plea. Riley's father Randall storms in and drags her away before anything more can be done. Disturbed by the girl's condition and the father's aggression, Jordan presses Cynthia for answers. Cynthia reveals that something truly evil is attached to Riley, something far more dangerous than anything she's dealt with before. But instead of confronting it, she refuses to help, fearing the consequences. This leads to tension between mother and daughter, with Jordan insisting that her father would have tried and Cynthia retorting that such efforts are what cost him his life. Haunted by the encounter, Jordan starts investigating Riley's background. She visits Agatha, a family friend who once referred Randall to Cynthia, and learns that Riley's mother is dead and her father may be hiding something dark. Meanwhile, Cynthia follows a hunch and uncovers a name from another patient's past, Doug Ferry, a former coach and convicted criminal who may have played a role in an old trauma that Cynthia's current patient Larry is still haunted by. The film draws a parallel between repressed trauma and actual evil manifesting in the form of parasitic entities. Jordan's concern deepens when Riley contacts her again. Driven by intuition and a sense of moral responsibility, Jordan visits Randall's home to speak directly with Riley. Randall initially denies Jordan access, claiming he has things under control. But when Jordan finds Riley secretly hiding in a shed, she discovers the horrifying truth. Randall is not only aware of the entity but is actively keeping it imprisoned. More disturbingly, he believes Riley must feed it to keep it from consuming her. He sees himself as her protector, even as he keeps her isolated and under psychological and possibly supernatural duress. When Jordan is caught snooping, Randall imprisons her too, warning her to stop meddling. In captivity, Jordan finally speaks directly with Riley. The girl, traumatized but sincere, expresses hope that Cynthia can help her. Riley reveals that she doesn't want to be a monster and that if she can be cured, her father might be freed from the curse of this thing that's overtaken their lives. Moved by Riley's desperation, Jordan convinces her to help her escape. As Cynthia and Agatha race against time to locate Jordan, Jordan and Riley try to outmaneuver Randall. It becomes clear that Randall and Riley have been feeding the entity with victims, believing it's the only way to keep it from devouring Riley herself. Now they plan to flee again and sink a car to hide their trail, presumably with Jordan inside. The stakes escalate as Jordan is tied up and threatened with death. Riley, caught between loyalty to her father and her own salvation, finally makes a choice. She frees Jordan. As the film nears its conclusion, the emotional weight deepens. Cynthia and Jordan are no longer just dealing with a client in need, they're standing at the edge of something ancient, something that doesn't just prey on the mind but festers in it, growing stronger with pain, trauma and silence. Cynthia finally agrees to help Riley, realizing that her inaction could doom both the girl and Jordan. She also acknowledges the emotional distance she has created, not only from her work but from her daughter, out of fear of repeating the mistakes that led to her husband's demise. The entity attached to Riley is revealed to be more than a manifestation of trauma. It's a parasite that feeds on human suffering, exploiting Riley's grief over her mother's death and the abuse from her father. Randall, once a grieving husband, was twisted by his belief that feeding the entity would save his daughter. Instead, it slowly corrupted them both. Cynthia enters Riley's mind in a final attempt to confront it directly. The psychic space is dark and violent, filled with the echoes of Riley's pain and fear, but Cynthia stands firm. In a gripping psychic battle, Cynthia guides Riley to see the truth. She is not responsible for her father's actions and she is not a monster. This act of clarity and inner strength weakens the entity, revealing it as a shadow without substance when faced with self-acceptance and truth. Cynthia, through sheer will and empathy, severs the bond between the creature and Riley, freeing her at last. In a quiet town plagued by secrets and trauma, Cynthia Winstone, a therapist with a psychic gift she has long suppressed, finds herself drawn back into the dark world she once abandoned. Years ago, Cynthia retreated from her psychic work after a tragedy involving her husband, who became dangerously consumed by the same supernatural abilities she now tries to deny. Her daughter Jordan has inherited the gift, though Cynthia has tried to shield her from its dangers. However, everything changes when Jordan becomes entangled with a troubled girl named Riley. Riley is the daughter of Randall Harris, a man broken by grief after losing his wife Samantha to a mysterious and horrific illness. The illness tore Samantha apart physically and emotionally, and in her final days she claimed she was being consumed by something not of this world, an entity that fed on her suffering. Now, years later, the same entity appears to have latched on to Riley, manifesting as both a psychological and supernatural affliction. Cynthia is initially hesitant to get involved. Her fear of revisiting past trauma keeps her distant from Jordan's pleas to help Riley. However, when Jordan witnesses Riley's possession and ultimately holds her as she dies, everything changes. The trauma of that night leaves a mark on Jordan, and Cynthia realizes she has no choice but to act. Riley's death sets off a chain of terrifying events. It's discovered that Randall has been involved in a string of murders, sacrificing people in an effort to placate the entity that once claimed his wife and now threatens his daughter. When Jordan is abducted by Randall, Cynthia must push past her fear and fully embrace her gift in order to save her daughter. She enters Jordan's psychic space, a place filled with pain and fear where the entity hides and feeds. As Cynthia and the police race to find Jordan's physical location, Cynthia embarks on a psychic journey into Jordan's mind where she confronts the creature directly. The entity has grown stronger by preying on Jordan's pain and Cynthia's guilt. Cynthia must face her own trauma, including the death of her husband, to break the cycle. She realizes that the key to defeating the entity is not through force but through acceptance, love, and truth. She teaches Jordan that the entity can only survive if its victims believe they deserve their pain. Meanwhile, Jordan regains consciousness buried alive in the woods, and Cynthia, with the help of her friend Agatha, locates her. They begin a desperate attempt to save her before it's too late. The entity, now fully awakened, attempts to consume Jordan, but Cynthia intervenes, offering herself instead. She tells the entity to feed on her instead of her daughter, embracing the fear and darkness to lure it out into the open. Together, Cynthia and Jordan confront the monster. Jordan, no longer afraid, faces the memory of her father and the pain it brought. They manage to physically and psychically destroy the creature in a dramatic final confrontation in the woods where the entity had been nesting. The creature is vanquished not by violence alone but by their emotional reconciliation and courage in confronting the pain that made them vulnerable in the first place. Rescue teams arrive just in time. Jordan is saved, though she's weak and emotionally shaken. Cynthia and Jordan share a heartfelt moment, acknowledging the presence of her late father and the pain he left behind. Jordan tells her mother that she saw him, and Cynthia comforts her, finally opening up about the pain they both share. In the aftermath, Cynthia begins to heal. She has reconnected with her daughter, faced the darkness inside herself, and finally come to terms with the tragedy that once drove her into hiding. Jordan begins therapy to process the trauma, but it's clear she's grown stronger. For the first time, Cynthia openly supports her daughter's abilities, no longer afraid of what they might bring. Jordan too is proud of her mother. Together they begin to accept their past, their pain, and their power. The film closes quietly. Jordan begins to open up about her experience, and Cynthia listens, no longer hiding from the darkness but embracing the light that comes from understanding it. While the scars remain both emotional and physical, they're no longer defining. Cynthia's final words to Jordan are filled with pride and relief. They survived not just the entity but the silence and fear it fed on. Though the supernatural threat has been destroyed, the story ultimately reveals that healing from trauma is not about forgetting or erasing the past but confronting it, understanding it, and choosing to move forward. The monster may have been metaphysical, but it was born of very real human pain. Through love, truth, and vulnerability, Cynthia and Jordan break the cycle and in doing so set each other free. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.